Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of my quest project. Today we will be talking about sorceresses in Greek mythology. Specifically, that includes Circe, Hecate, and Medea. Now, Circe is a goddess possessing the powers of a sorceress. I am not entirely sure what she's the goddess of, but I do know she is a goddess. She has a talent for mixing drugs. She's the daughter of Helios and Perse and Oceanid, which is exactly why she's a goddess. She's the aunt of Medea. She turned men into animals for entertainment or revenge, a bit unclear. Her brother was the keeper of the famed Golden Fleece, and her sister was the wife of King Minos. Now, in the Odyssey, Odysseus's men came upon her island because she lived on an island, and for some reason hoped they wouldn't run into her. They did. She served them food and drink when they came upon her castle, and when they'd finished the food, she struck them with her wand and they turned it into pigs, and she drove them into her pigsty. Like I said, she turns men into animals. She had a reason for this though, and it was men are animals or something. Odysseus' second in command ran back to the ship to tell Odysseus. Odysseus wanted him to lead him back, but Eurylochus, his second in command, refused. Circe's potion didn't work on Odysseus because of the drug he was given by Hermes when he was first about to set off for her palace. She turned the men back after Odysseus tried to kill her and granted them a 1-year stay on her island where they feasted and lived. She said she'd let them go. She'd let them go finally if once they left they visited Hades. And in more classical telling, Circe and Odysseus have 3 children while he lives on the island. Now, the story of Glaucus and Scylla. Anyway, Circe was in love with Glaucus, who was in love with Scylla. I'm gonna go with Scylla. Circe was really pissed that he was in love with Scylla, and instead of taking it out on the man, she took it out on the women. Circe's kind of odd here in this way because though she does punish and enact a lot of vengeful acts on men, she punishes Scylla in this case. Circe mixed a potion with terrible properties and chanted spells over them. She poured the potion into Scylla's sea pool where she liked to bathe, and when Scylla came to the pool, she was waist deep when her lower half turned into rabid dogs and she transformed into this terrifying creature. And the image of Circe is not poisoning, but that same artist actually did do a painting of Circe poisoning Scylla's bath. Now, Medea and Jason came upon Circe's island after Jason had killed Medea's brother, so Circe then purified them, and her purification ritual consisted of slitting the throats of pigs and letting it drip on Medea and Jason. And I believe Jason's Argonauts also came upon the island at some point. Anyway, moving on to Hecate. Hecate, this is very long, is associated with / goddess of, it was a bit unclear, witchcraft, magic, the moon, doorways, crossroads, creatures of the night like ghouls, etc., drugs, night, and ghosts. She's often represented as 3-bodied or headed to represent crossroads. She's the daughter of Paris, and Asteria, according to Tassoids. She is frequently associated with Demeter. In the 5th century is really when her association with the darker side of humanity began. She is considered an underworld goddess. She was equally as powerful in heaven and hell, according to Virgil, and to the Romans she was Trivia. Now, for her general mythology, it's thought that Cerberus was an early version of Hecate because triple-bodied, Cerberus 3 heads, an early version who kind of developed into this goddess, as well as part of her worship. Often dogs, specifically puppies, were sacrificed to her at crossroads. Even, I believe they also ate the dogs, in certain cases. But she was often, worship and, sacrifices to her often happened at crossroads and doorways. And I believe her sacrifices corresponded with phases of the moon. I do believe that's why the moon's on there. Let me check. Not a clue. I believe it's because... you would sacrifice to her at a new moon. That is why. I'm aware that is not a new moon, but a full moon. Now, returning to this ever-present theme of Artemis, of the triad that Hecate, Artemis, and Selene form because of the moon, just because of all this stuff. Artemis represents the land, Selene represents heaven, Hecate represents hell, as well as something to do with magic and darkness, and another thing that is not just heaven, hell, and earth. But they formed this triad because they all have this association with the moon, even though Selene is the only one who's actually the goddess of the moon. However, if you go over to Roman mythology, Artemis is a goddess of the moon there with Diana. Demeter, Hecate is associated with Demeter because when Persephone was kidnapped, Demeter searched the earth for Persephone with Hecate and using Hecate's torches, which is why you'll often see Hecate mostly with Demeter and Persephone, and that's really the only mythology she appears in is with those two, but she did have a prominent role in worship. But it kind of clashed a little because she was so similar to Artemis and Selene. Now, Medea. She's an enchantress. She's the daughter of Atis. She is considered a strong woman. She killed her brother and children, but maybe Jason killed them. I'm not sure. Greek mythology is very conflicting. She's the granddaughter. I thought that would say grand niece, and I don't know why, and that's why I had that inflection. She's the granddaughter of Helios. She is the niece of Circe. She fell in love with Jason because of Eros, I believe on Hera's orders, but I think my source said Aphrodite's. And she is a priestess of Hecate. Now, she was in love with Jason. She did a bunch of stuff for Jason. I have to talk more about that. Oh. I was kind of mixing her up with Eos for a second. Married Jason. They did some stuff. Argonaut stuff. She helped with a thing. I should get more specific. That is what this project is about. If you can't tell, it's quest night tomorrow. Okay. Jason and the Argonauts had to do a series of tasks for Medea's father, the keeper of the Golden Fleece, and Medea offered to help him with some. In return, she asked for Jason to marry her to get her away from the island. Her father didn't want to hand over the fleece after the task was complete. After nightfall, Medea led Jason to the fleece, which was guarded by a dragon. Medea drugged the dragon and took the fleece. Her father gathered his men, including Medea's brother. When her brother got too close to Argo, Jason and his buddy's ship, she killed him. She chopped him into pieces and threw him in the ocean, slowing down her father's men and allowing the Argo to get away. They arrived on Corcyra, where I believe that's meant to say Phoenicians, but it says Phoenicians, lived, and the Colchian flotilla had caught up with them and demanded Medea be handed over. Their king agreed as long as Medea and Jason had not laid together. As a result of this, Jason quickly arranged for them to get married, and then they went to a cave to consummate the marriage. On their journey to Crete, they were attacked by a bronze giant Talus who had a vein of ichor, the blood of the gods. Medea gave him the evil eye, which caused him to knock his ankle where the vein led to against a rock and weakened him, so he fell off a cliff into the sea. After the Argonauts' voyage, Jason arrived to Iolcus with the fleece for the king, but Jason learned the king had killed his parents and little brother while Jason was gone, so Jason swore to take revenge. Medea offered to kill the king herself, leaving the land free for the Argonauts to rule. She disguised herself and her handmaidens as old crones, claiming to be Artemis bringing good fortune to the land. Peleus asked what Artemis required of him. She said she wanted to reward him by making him young again. The king was hesitant until she transformed herself back into a young woman to show her magic. Medea enlisted Peleus' own daughter's help, who cut him into pieces and brought him back to her. She placed the pieces of him in her cauldron and cooked them into a stew. In other versions, the murder was carried out on Hera's orders. Medea and Jason traveled to Corinth, where they lived happily for a while. They had 2 sons, but eventually, Jason got sick of Medea, so he married Glauce, the daughter of King Creon. And Medea was not happy about this. She sent them a wedding gift. It was a golden crown and white robe, and when Glauce put them on her and her wedding party, they erupted into flames, except for Jason. And her revenge didn't end there, because her best known thing really was killing Jason and their kids. After she did that, she fled the land and she went to Thebes. No. She fled the land, she went to Thebes, she cured Heracles, which I don't have on here, of his madness, which allowed him to go on his labors. But after that, she went to Athens because the king, Aegeus, had promised her safety, so she married him and cured his infertility. She bore him a son, Metis, And when Theseus arrived, the older son, Medea knew he would take the throne from her son. Now, Theseus was an Athenian boy who the Athenian boys had to be sent to Crete every year to feed the Minotaur. And he was like, I don't want this to happen anymore. So he went and killed the Minotaur, but nobody expected him to come back. So she also probably didn't know that. But she made Aegeus believe that Theseus was a spy. Aegeus invited Theseus to a feast and gave him a poisoned goblet of wolfsbane. Aegeus saw the serpent on Theseus' sword and knocked the goblet from his hand before he could drink it. So then Theseus pursued Medea or tried to kill her. So she hid under a magic cloud and fled Athens with her son. Then she went to Italy. Medea went all over the place, leaving dead people in her wake. Low-key, pretty cool. I have to admit, kind of kick-ass. She follows an archetype of like predatory female, or that is Circe. I believe it's Medea though. Anyway, the connections before I finish off this video is that, oh my goodness. Wait. Is that Medea is a priestess of Hecate as well as the daughter of Circe. So that is how Circe and Hecate are connected, as well as, okay, I just went and looked at my really big Greek mythology family chart. The problem is, I was under the impression that Hecate and Circe had like the same mother. They don't. It's like one letter is switched, but they're both like 5-letter versions of the 5-character versions of the letters P-E-U-R-E. And there's probably an S in there. Anyway, that was Sorceresses in Greek Mythology. Thank you so much for watching.